Hey guys, welcome back here to The Fishing Teacher. Appreciate you guys checking out today's video and hanging with me a little bit. And guys, today in preparation for the spring season coming up just around the corner, I want to give some tips and advice on fishing my favorite springtime lure, which is a shaky head. There's a lot of nuances to a shaky head, a lot of little tricks and tips and modifications as far as rigging it and how to fish it. So I'm going to give you guys some just sort of an overview of things that have really helped me, helped me catch more fish on a shaky head. So I think it's going to add up to some good fish for you guys here. Guys, before we get started, real quick reminder that Cumberland Pro Lures has got a special run going on with my Blaukat Throwback jig. This is the black with blue tinsel model here. Only, guys, you can get this at the Cumberland Pro Lures website. It's not in Tackle Warehouse, this color. So I'll put the Cumberland Pro Lures website and the link in the description here if you guys like to order one. This is a hand-tied living rubber, hand-tied tinsel skirt, super labor intensive. This is my favorite color jig right here, guys. It just looks so good in the water. So if you want to pick up a few, you better hurry up. They're probably going to get sold out pretty quick there. So I'll have that link in the description. And also, guys, I will have everything that I'm talking about with my shaky heads, all the worms and the heads. Those will be linked in my video description here. If you guys would like to use my Tackle Warehouse link to get you all set up with the shaky heads, I really appreciate that. Okay, shaky head, guys, it's been around for a long time now. It's sort of like, it was a modification of a jig head rig. It's like initially the shaky head, well, I guess the predecessor of a shaky head is when, guys just started taking just a regular jig head like this and they just rigged it just like this. It's called a jig head worm, which still works good today. I mean, I still use a jig head worm sometimes, but this is what started it out with the jig head worm. And then eventually you got to the shaky head setup like this, which is just a different type of a hook and a different type of a rigging structure. So I'm gonna go over in detail right off the bat about how I like to rig it and the worm. Also, guys, I'll show you this. Zoom just came out with a new worm that's gonna be awesome for a shaky head. This is the thick trick worm here. I'll put that in my Tackle Warehouse link too, the thick trick worm, but this is what we're gonna be talking about in today's video. And when you're talking about shaky heads, you can fish all different type of size of worms or profiles on a shaky head. You can fish everything from a 4-inch worm, some people even shaky head an 8 or 9-inch worm and everything in between. So based upon the size of your shaky head and the worm, it's a pretty diverse bait. But for the sake of this video, I'm gonna talk about my favorite setup for spring fishing in terms of the shaky head setup that I like to use, and I'll explain why. Okay, first of all, let's talk about the shaky head. And a lot of you guys that have been with me for a while, you've heard me talking about this. This is my favorite shaky head. It's the Gamakatsu Tricky Head. I'll put this link in the description too. It's got an O'Shaughnessy bend hook here. That you can see the hook is not like a perfectly round bend. This is called the O'Shaughnessy, which has a little bit tighter bend right there. Adds up to a lot more hook set, or a lot better hook sets. It's got a 10 keeper here. Now this keeper is extremely important, because if you don't have a high quality keeper, your worm will slide down all the time and it's a big mess. And then it's got this nice little conical head that comes through rocks and everything really good, but the Gamakatsu Tricky Head. And then I'll show you guys how I like to rig it. I'll use the thick trick worm here. Rigging it is really critical. The first thing, like we talk about on all my baits, is, rough your worm up a little bit. Now this is really critical with the shaky head because it changes the color a little bit. It makes it a little bit softer for a better hook set. Because I'll tell you one thing about a shaky head, guys. A shaky head, you'll lose a lot of fish on a shaky head. I'll explain why here in a little bit. So I'm gonna give you some tips on not losing as much on a shaky head. Roughing that worm up is the first step in the process there. Okay, the next thing you wanna do is you only wanna come through like an 1/8 of an inch. You don't wanna come through very far, just about like that, because you want this head of the worm that I just went through, you want it on the inside of that keeper to secure it. If you come in too far, it just doesn't look right. Now see, this is the perfect way to do it. See how that little keeper right there, it's just barely sticking out on the worm. This is perfect, and it's gonna keep that worm, locked in position. And then the next thing you wanna do is bunch it up a little bit, come through all the way through the worm like that, and then make a channel. Start going back and forth like this with the worm. And you're gonna create this channel a little bit for the hook shank. Now this is very critical right here, because creating this channel where it slides easy, it's gonna make a huge difference in how many fish you catch. If you don't create this channel like this, you're gonna lose a lot more fish. And the worst thing you can do for a shaky head, guys, is just put it back in the worm like this. You don't ever wanna just stick it back in the center of the worm, because effectively you've made it completely weedless to the point where this is just going to impede your hook set. You can realize how much plastic you have to come through if you hook it right back in the worm. Plus you got to penetrate the fish's mouth. This is basically like not even using a hook. So come all the way through, just like we got right there. And most of the time, this is how I leave it. See that point hook? I will leave my shaky head just like that, with that point sticking out. Now, I'll do this most of the time because I do like fishing the shaky head on somewhat of a clean bottom. But if I'm in a snaggy area, like there's some brush or real gnarly rocks, then sometimes I'll just back it up and put that point, back in like that. Now, the hook is still all the way through, but the point's just barely in there to make it weedless. Now, the other thing with the shaky head, so this is the finished product here. One of the biggest pieces of advice I'll give you on a shaky head, guys, is go to a light head. This is a 1/16 of an ounce, the Gamakatsu tricky head. If it's really windy or if I'm fishing deep, occasionally I'll use an 1/8 ounce, but I don't even own a shaky head that weighs over an 1/8 of an ounce. It's just like, you don't need a 1/4 or 3/16, because that makes the bait drop down straight like that. The 16th will give it more of that natural glide, and especially when you're working it on the bottom and you pick it up, it just glides more natural, and it's just a lot more appealing to the fish. So that is the rig that I have with it. Now, the line test that I use with it, if I'm fishing real clear water, and say, for example, I'm using a little 4-incher, like a little 4-inch shaky head, I might go down to 6-pound test line. But most of the time, I like 8-pound test. Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon is the line that I use for it. 1/8 ounce works really, really good on both a 16th of an ounce head and an 1/8 ounce head. Occasionally, if I'm fishing really like around some thicker cover, say for example, if I'm skipping that shaky head underneath a boat dock, which is, I like to do that in the springtime a lot, is skip that shaky head under the docks. Occasionally I'll go to 10-pound test for that. Or if I'm using a bigger, fatter worm, like sometimes I like the shaky head, like a 5 or 6 inch soft plastic stick bait, like a Senko or something, then sometimes I'll use 10-pound line. But most of the time, it's 8-pound test and a little bit, 6 here and there, a little bit 10 here and there, but 8-pound test is a really good thing to have with it. Rod that I use, guys, 6'11" Megabass whip snake. Any type of a 6'11" to 7 foot rod is going to be good with it. One of the things about a shaky head is you don't necessarily have to have a real stiff rod, but I usually like some type of a medium action. And I just like the way the bait feels with it, and I get good performance. But when you're working a shaky head, this is how I usually work it. I'll cast it out there like that, let it hit the bottom, and I'll shake it just like what you said a shaky head. Look at my rod tip right there, how it's shaking. I'll shake it, and then I'll pull it like that. Take up the slack, I'll shake it like that in place a little bit, and then I'll just pull the rod. So this is how it looks when I'm working it. Shake, 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 pull like that. And I'm sort of dragging that worm along the bottom. Shake, 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 pull like that. And occasionally I'll pull it up faster to maybe bring it up off the bottom a little bit. But I have found that, when I do that, just working it like that, pulling it, take up the slack, work it like that, pull it like that. That's how I get a lot of bites with a shaky head. Now, when you get a bite with a shaky head, how you set the hook is going to be really important to determine if you lose that fish or not. The worst thing that you can do with a shaky head is this. You're throwing it out there, you're working it like this, and boom, you get a strike. Now, a lot of people, it's like, okay, there's a strike like that, I got to set the hook like that. That's how they do it on a shaky head. That is when you're going to lose a bunch of fish, and it has to do with how the fish bites the shaky head and setting the hook with that hard, sort of that slack line hook set, which is terrible to do. This is how you want to do it. Throw it out there, working that bait like this, you get your bite. Okay, you got a bite. A fish has got the lure. You got nothing to get in a hurry about at all. They're not going to spit it out. If it's a decent fish, they're not going to spit it out. There's one on there. watch the fish swim out a little bit. Watch your line move out and reel down to the fish like this until your line is tight. And then after the fish has moved 2 or 3 or even 4 foot and your line is tight, just start reeling fast and pull back like that and keep reeling. You're not setting the hook. All you're doing is just pulling back and reeling at the same time. And I talk about this quite a bit. And what this does is when that fish has it in the mouth like that, you're not trying to just jerk it like that and blow the fish's mouth open. It's like you're just reeling and you're pulling the fish like that. And as that fish tries to struggle and pull the other direction, it's as you're pulling and reeling, it's just driving that hook point deeper into the fish as it tries to pull the opposite direction. So that is very critical in order to get a lot of really good hook sets on it. But anyway, guys, that's just some of my favorite ways to fish it. And, you know, we'll go into some like where you want to fish it later, but fish it anywhere less than 5 foot deep, 5 or 10 foot deep. Once that water temperature starts to get 55 degrees or so, I like a shaky head the best when the water temperature is between 55 and 70. So anyway, guys, that's the deal. I'll have all these links in the description to the new worms, the jig head setup, everything like that. Appreciate it, and we'll talk later.